welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. Today we're talking about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and we're brought to you, as always, by Progressive Christianity, a wonderful place to get all of your progressive Christian resources, and an organization that has been setting the standard for what it means to be a progressive Christian for 30 years by the Christian left, a nationwide ministry and community for Christian progressives and allies, and the Progressive Christian Alliance, a movement and denomination that rallies together around the principles of justice, respect, and inclusion. I'm joined, as always, by the one and only Mark Sandlin. How you doing today, Mark?
Very well. I'm always reminded when you say that how lucky the world is that there's only one of me.
I'm not sure the world could handle more than one of either of us, Mark.
I think that might be a very fair observation from you, yes.
Glad you're here today.
It's scary enough when they just let the two of us get together.
I know, it is scary because you never know what we're going to do. We don't know what we're going to do.
What kind of good trouble we're going to get into?
We're going to get into all kinds of good trouble.
Absolutely.
A reminder that if you have not seen all of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3, we're going to spoil that for you. We are a spoil-filled zone here, and we will absolutely be talking about all of that. But before we do, we have to sit down and make sure that we have something to drink. You got something to drink today, Mark?
I do. I probably not surprisingly. It might be a question that comes up at some point. I don't know. But my favorite episode was New Life, New Civilizations, the final episode of this.
Okay. Yeah.
And at the very end, we see four of the characters all having a drink to try to breathe in and breathe out and process everything that's happened. And it looks like they're having a bourbon. And that's all the excuse I needed. So I have my Star Trek glass with a nice two-finger pour of one of my favorite bourbons. What did you decide to go with?
I went with something a little bit different. And it's from the Klingons, who we don't see in this, but I just thought this sounded good. I've got some Klingon blood wine. It is some rum, tequila, cranberry juice, and Tabasco. It's a little bit spicy here.
Got a little Klingon kick to it.
And I've got this the glass I always use for Star Trek. It looks a little futuristic to me. And so this is what I'm drinking my blood wine out of.
Lovely.
Cheers to you, Mark.
Cheers, sir.
Let's have a sip and let's come back and geek out a little bit about Star Trek Strange New Worlds.
Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Welcome to our Geek Out segment. Today, as Caleb has said, we're talking about Season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. The series it takes us back to the Enterprise before Kirk with Captain Pike, Spock, all the crew. And this season sort of pushes them beyond the monster of the week kind of adventures into a larger arc, wrestling with what Star Trek really, or Starfleet really stands for. Navigating relationships that'll shape the future, and even discovering what it means, or trying to discover what it means to show compassion for the other, even when it is hard. So, Caleb, we covered the first two episodes of this season when they dropped, and we had a little discussion that we thought that maybe, we weren't sure, based on the last episode of last season, the first episode of this season, that we were heading towards a show that was less about Roddenberry's kind of optimism. And it felt like we were starting to move towards the dangers of trauma and human response to it.
Yeah.
Now that you've seen the full Season 3, what are your thoughts on that direction?
I kind of do feel like we moved in that direction. It was not as light as previous seasons, and I will admit that as the season went on, I kept finding myself longing for a bit more lightheartedness and optimism. I think maybe because that's why I've traditionally turned to Trek. I like the optimism of the future. It's a
Right.
reminder that, as
Yeah.
you said, like Roddenberry, the vision that Roddenberry cast, that there's something that we can strive towards, that humanity can ultimately overcome the things that we've done wrong, and that our divisions, and that we can unify Earth and then move forward. And it did feel a lot like we were dealing with people's own trauma, the mistakes that they'd made in the past, how they were going to overcome those, about what it meant to be Starfleet, about whether or not Starfleet was ultimately good. And you know what? Like halfway through the season, I'm like, I could use another musical episode or
Right.
another animated thing. There were
Hey, next year we get the Muppet episode, though, don't we?
next year the Muppet episode. I'm ready for that. You know,
It's about time.
we had the holodeck episode. That one was
Yeah,
fun. We had
that
the
was
one
fun.
with the Q, and that one was kind of fun. But
That was kind of
the rest of them were kind of heavy. Am I
No, I
reading
would
that
agree.
right?
No, I would completely agree. I think that we are losing the track a little bit here in terms of what really made the fans get so excited
Yeah.
about Strange New Worlds. It felt like we were coming back to TOS, to the original series. It felt
Right.
like we were kind of reclaiming that space. And I don't know if maybe viewership started falling off, so they said, "Oh, we better pay more attention to what's working for other franchises." I'm not sure. So I'm going to continue on that. Outside of
Yeah.
that particular issue, how did you feel like this season
Yeah.
compares to the first two seasons that we've had?
I didn't think it was as strong. And
Yeah.
so, you know, I think the Rotten Tomatoes scores have the first season the highest, and then the second, and
Okay.
then this one.
Makes
And
sense.
I think I would not rank them in that way. I think I would rank season 2 as my top season, then season 1, then this one. But I didn't feel. I guess I kind of felt like the episodes were all kind of fair to middling mark.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like they weren't real compelling for me, and
Mm.
I'm not sure why, other than I think that I wanted a little bit more optimism, really, and
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe to explore a little bit of some new territory. That's
Yeah.
that's one of the things that was really groundbreaking about the original series, is that you never quite knew where you were going to go. You never
Right.
knew what obstacles the crew was going to encounter or how they were going to respond to that. And this felt a little bit more formulaic, like we're retreading some old ground here.
Yeah.
And it just I enjoyed watching the season, but not in the same way that I enjoyed watching the first 2 seasons. How about you?
Hear that. I hear that. Yeah, I think the lack of the overall optimism obviously was part of the problem. I also think that there were several times where it felt like, oh yeah, they're going to do this thing, like Terrarium, the penultimate
Yep.
episode. It was incredible. And then they did what I think they've been doing the entire season.
Yeah.
They had this perfect moment where Ortega's is like just in the worst spot, and it's like, why? And and instead of letting it live there, which is what good writing would do, they do this fan service thing that they did throughout the year, where they bring in this old set of beings to kind of say, hey, look what we did. Remember when we did that on the TNG or the whatever? And it feels like they did a lot of fan service this year that they hadn't been doing. And they frequently did it at the worst point ever. Like, you almost had it.
Yeah.
It was almost there. And then you just said, haha, look, we're like we used to be, rather than actually just showing us, rather than try to telegraph it, rather than just doing it. And that got old. I mean, did you see some of that?
Because like the best fan service is just to create a compelling show and a compelling story, because that's what we want ultimately. We and if you're doing that, if you're telling a good story, if you are making us think through like this new way, this new cast and all what they're doing, and you're making a compelling story, I think that it's fun, and that's what we
Yeah.
want. What we
Right.
don't want, I don't think, is just telling the same stories over and over. And I don't
Yeah.
I don't think we want to resort to poor storytelling. And so
Right.
if they create a wonderful show, best fan service they could do. And this has been a wonderful show. And I'm not saying this was a bad season. I'm just saying that what this was the halfway point, right, Mark?
Right.
And
It was.
so
Yeah.
I would rather see the second half of the series look more like the first half than
Yeah. I
than
will say, and even I think the first half of this season I liked a little less than the last half. The last half had several episodes that I thought were starting to find it again, except for the lack of optimism, the fan service they kept throwing in. Fan service is fun every once in a while, but not when you make it a major part of the plot.
yeah.
Uh,
Unless it's like,
then it
you
feels
know,
redundant.
like whenever they did, it was kind of fan service whenever they did the crossover episode between Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds. But that was fan service in a way that was
Yeah.
creative, that had
It
never
felt
been
new.
done before. It pulled in both franchises. That was
Yeah.
great. I want to see more
Yeah.
stuff like that, I think.
Yeah. Rather than like we saw at the end of Terrarium, where it was like
Yes.
wink, wink, nod, nod. Look, we're just like it was the last time that they did this to Kirk.
Correct. Yes.
I mean, just like, please, we don't need that.
Right.
Well, speaking of the original series, we have the characters sort of assembled now. They're making decisions that seem to, at least some of them are making decisions that seem to foreshadow where they're going to be on the original series. I'm curious, thus far, who do you think out of the original series characters has had the most compelling arc in terms of setting them on the path for the original series?
I think they've spent a lot of time with Spock, you know,
Yeah.
and to kind of develop his both the way he approaches logic and how he deals with his human side.
Yeah.
And I think we've spent a lot of time with him, and I get that because he's a fan favorite character,
Right, of
you know.
course.
So I think that makes sense. And Ethan Peck does a really good job. He's a
Very
good
good.
Spock, and I
Yeah.
think he does do a really good job of balancing like the logic and the human emotion. And that's certainly something I think that we see in the original iteration of Spock. So I think that they've spent a lot of time there. This season, as you predicted, we've been seeing a lot of Kirk coming
Right.
on. You know, we definitely saw him more than we have in other seasons. And I honestly, I don't know how I feel about that, Mark. I he does a good job of playing Kirk, I guess, but it just feels like every time Kirk is there, for some reason, I'm just kind of reminded that it's not William Shatner who's playing that Kirk, and he
Yeah.
does a good job. For me, it feels a little disruptive to the storytelling. I'm not.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it's because I like Pike so much that I
Yeah.
don't feel the desire for him to be replaced by this other version of Kirk. But they've really spent a lot of time this year developing Kirk, and
Yeah.
so we've seen that. And of course, Scotty gets introduced. But I would say this year we've seen a lot of Spock and Kirk. How
Right,
about you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree in general with that. We've seen a lot of the two. I'm almost. I was about to say I'm almost the opposite from you on who I liked better.
Yeah.
Spock just felt like Spock. It didn't feel. I felt like we were already seeing the Spock that we get in the original series.
Yeah.
Which I love, absolutely love. In terms of any kind of character arc that pushes him towards that, I'm not really seeing a lot of that from him.
Yeah.
But he is part of the crew.
Yes.
So I'm glad we're getting to see a lot of him there. I do find it disturbing that we keep cutting back to Kirk so much when he is not. It's his brother that's part of the crew, but we're seeing
Right.
more of him than his brother, who
Yes.
is on the ship. I I find that a little bothersome. But if I just look at the question, which character arc do you see moving the best towards the original series? I really do think they've written him well in terms of seeing him develop into a captain and
Yeah.
making choices, and that making that being known as that kind of guy who will buck the trends if he has to. And I do like his take on Kirk only
Yeah.
because Shatner is a character of himself. And so to do a character of a character of a
Yeah, you can't.
character,
Yeah.
it would just seem silly. And
Yes.
I feel like we get enough.
Why, Mark? Don't you think this would play really well if someone else were doing it?
Exactly. And so I think he does an okay job. I really I like it, and I do think the character arc is pretty good. All right, last question, since we talked about the fact that we do feel like this season maybe isn't the best of the three and has some issues with it, including
That's
some
a
questionable
generous way to put that. I like that.
including some questionable fan service.
Yeah.
Given that the 2023 writers and actors strike said, so reportedly there were delays in all of this, do you
Yeah.
think that maybe those are factors, and that we see it this season in pacing and storytelling and some cheap storytelling via fan service? Is that maybe part of what's going on here?
I mean, could be. I think anytime we get a writer's strike, that and of course, all for fair wages for everybody, and believe in that.
Mhm.
But anytime we see a writer's strike, it often is reflected in the quality of the storytelling,
Absolutely.
which I think reminds us of how important writers are, and how important the
100.
production team
Yeah.
is. That said, they did have 2 years to put this together, and
Right.
it feels like they still had enough time to put together a
Right.
little bit better storytelling than we got this season.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think they did. I do think it suffered in a lot of ways, in terms of it feels like there was a lot of disjointed storytelling,
Yeah.
and it also feels like there are episodes where they didn't put as much thought into them as we saw in the first two
Mhm.
seasons. And I could see that the writer's strike in particular would have a lot to do with that. I'm thinking of 4.5 Vulcans, that episode in
Yeah.
particular.
Yep.
There's some real issues there. And
Yeah.
I think that the writer's strike could have impacted the choices they made and the short-sightedness that was in that. So it was still, I mean, I'm with you. It's still better than every episode's still better than most of the episodes of, say, Discovery. I mean,
Yes.
you know,
Fair.
so I mean, we're comparing the best to comparing it to itself in its best years,
Right.
and it's still pretty good. So,
Right.
all right,
Yes,
we could
fair.
go on and on, but we don't really have time for that. We need to get on to the theological and political impacts that we saw in this, because that really is what this show's all about, even though we love geeking out. So
Absolutely.
let's take a quick drop, have a little more of our beverages, and come back on the other side.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We're entering our Theopolitico segment. We have thoroughly geeked out about Strange New Worlds, but as Mark said, there is a lot of theology and politics here too. So I want to start out, Mark, with episode 7. And this is the episode where Ortega's brother, who is a journalist, exposes some eerie similarities between Starfleet and an armed military fleet. Which I've always thought is interesting, right? Because we've got this great vision of the future where humanity has kind of overcome its divisions and united itself and all these other planets in the Federation, and then also is organized as a naval fleet and
Right.
as they soar through space. So journalism often uncovers some uncomfortable facts, particularly for people in power. What do we do, Mark, whenever journalism is controlled by administrations, whenever
Right.
journalists are not really independent, where they're not really free, which seems like a direction the United States is headed. What do we do to overcome that? And what's the importance of like independent journalism, and how do we ensure it?
Yeah, well, and I think obviously you hit on the main point is that we make sure that we're supporting independent journalism, and we're lucky in that we're in an age now where we do have social media, and it's easier for groups to point to each other and say these are folks who are doing some really good independent stuff. Money is going to be a big factor, particularly when we just play this. We were talking semi-theoretical, but let's put it in the real world right now. The folks with the money are shutting down the stories and making sure that the storyline that they want is the one being told. So independent journalists are going to have a much harder time of funding what they do. So one important thing, as hard as it is right now, because we're all struggling financially, is that you make sure you get out there and you support them financially. You find the ones that you trust that are doing the good work and make sure that they are funded in a way that they can continue to exist. But you also can do that simply by making sure that you share their stuff. When you find it, get out there, share it on social media. They will be set up in a way that will help them continue. The more people that are reading them, the more that they're going to be able to survive. But also, I think it's important that we do our own investigating, that we have resources now. There are ways to find it out what's going on, and turn to your trusted sources. They might not be independent journalists. They might be your local minister. They might be a handful of politicians that really seem to have not been eaten up by the system. So those are right off the top of my head the things I would most quickly point to, because we have to have that. Because yes,
Yeah.
the major journalism is slowly, and we can see it every day, becoming less and less about the full truth. Yes. Echo chamber that is guided by the rich.
Crumbling all around us. Although I think one thing that we have seen is that money does the money that we have does have
Does.
power, right? Like boycotting Disney and Hulu had an
Made a
impact,
difference.
as we saw
Yep.
today that Kimmel is getting his show back. And
Back.
so
Yep.
boycotting makes a difference. Using your money as you can, contributing to the sources, as Mark said, but I think also, also refusing to put your money
Absolutely.
into other
To the
places,
wrong places.
into the wrong
Yeah.
places, right? If you're
Yeah.
costing Disney $4.8 billion, then that
Right.
has an impact. I think that one of the things that has concerned me in
Yeah.
recent years is that we really have seen, I guess, journalists who are a part of smaller organizations, even like local papers and things like that, that a lot of those jobs have just completely disappeared. And
Absolutely.
so it's concerning to me that we don't have as many independent journalists as we used to have. And so I think, Mark, one of the things that scares me, because I believe exactly like you said, that it's so important to fact check, and it's important to find sources that are speaking giving factual information, unbiased information on social media. But the other thing that I'm very concerned about, Mark, is that we've also seen the folks who control social media really censoring certain outlets and certain viewpoints. So if social media is one of the primary places where we're getting this information, and yet social media is also being
Also control.
censored, how is it that we continue to get access to that type of journalism?
Well, we really are in a tough spot because, as you've pointed out, a lot of local papers are gone. So, one thing is to make sure that when you go to those sites right now, while they're still available, when you find them, make sure you sign up for ways of being in contact with them outside of their social media outlets. Get on their mailing list. pay for an actual newspaper to show up to your house. That those are small things that we can be doing, but also we need to be networking locally with all of the folks that are like-minded and are we know that we can trust, so that we can share resources as we discover them. Because you're right, the billionaires own the social media outlets, and we're fooling ourselves if we don't think they're controlling the amount of information that they don't like that's being shared.
You know, when I was younger, I thought, "Hey, this is great. We've got all of this tech information, and like, so what if I don't get like a local paper or whatever? Like, I don't
Right.
need that. I don't need it." And now I'm like, "Oh wait, no,
Boy,
independent journalists are
boy, did we need that.
so important. Boy, yeah, boy, do we need that, and access to that in a way that is not
Yeah.
controlled by billionaires
Yep.
is so important. So thanks, Mark. I think those are great practical steps. So in episode 8, what's that? The 4.5 Vulcans episode.
4.5. Oh yeah.
Several crew members, they have to become Vulcans, right?
Yep.
And they all believe that they are coming to logical conclusions. But over the course of the episode, we can see that while they're using their logic brain, that doesn't
Right.
necessarily mean they're coming to logical conclusions, right?
Right.
Because La'an comes to the conclusion that she wants to start a war, and that is her logic that has led her
Right.
there, right? And I'm reminded of one of your quotes, Mark, where you say, you can't logic someone out of a position they didn't get to logically.
Right.
So, how does this apply to people who think they have come to logical conclusions? How do we have conversations with folks who maybe like La'an have come
Right.
to outrageous conclusions based on their own logic?
Well, I mean, part of the issue there is we tend to try to come at it like like you quoted me talking about,
Yeah.
from a logical standpoint, and try to logic them out of it. You're just not going to do that. So you've got to find another route. And if you have the time, the first thing you do is you build a relationship, because then you actually get to have a real conversation. If you're coming up on someone and you're just trying to talk facts, everybody can take the facts and make of it what they prefer to have the conclusion be. So one thing is you build a relationship, and what happens there is you get emotions involved. You get love. I'm just going to jump to the big word. You get love involved, all kinds of different love, but where you actually learn to be compassionate about another person and care what they think and care about their outcome. That's what's really going to change any of this in the long run. Is that great for changing someone's mind overnight so they don't go out and really hurt somebody the next day? Well, it's going to be really hard, but
Yeah.
it is at least the beginning. We should have already been doing all of this work, reaching across the aisle, creating friendships, figuring out how can I be in partnership and in a relationship with a person who maybe has severely different moral outlooks that I actually find, frankly, disgusting. But how do I see the humanity in them to get past all of those feelings and not need to try to make this unrealistic call to logic that's just not going to work?
Yeah.
That's kind of my first instinct on that. It's obviously a complicated question. What do you see there?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think relationship changes hearts and minds, and I think am a little just disturbed by the state of things where people who say that they follow Jesus, for instance, come to conclusions like, well, we don't have to take care of people who are living in
Right.
poverty,
Right.
or we don't need to care about healthcare. And they take verses like way out of scripture, but in their mind, or way out of
Way out of
context.
context.
And
Yeah.
and in their minds, like, have developed this kind of logical conclusion for like how they can justify discrimination or
Mhm.
whatever. And I think that maybe I think folks like us who can name those things. I think naming those, I think, helps present both an emotional and a logical argument for people maybe outside of those who have done their logicking, so that maybe hopefully other people don't come to logical fallacies in the same way
Yeah.
that these other folks have.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Are we going to move off of that episode?
yeah, yes, I was going to. You have something else to say about that one? That episode?
I do
Yeah.
need to say
Okay.
one thing
What do you
about
need to
that.
say about 4.5 Vulcans, Mark?
There is the ending of 4.5 Vulcans is
Yeah.
actually a little problematic.
Yeah. Talk about the ending.
Everyone becomes Vulcans,
Yeah.
and no one wants to change back.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the way they get them to change back is to have them go inward
Yeah.
and recognize their true selves, which is really about their original genetics.
Yep.
I have to say that approach is a very transphobic understanding of what makes a person's true self.
Yeah.
I think that this is one of those places where I think the writer's strike hurt them, because we
Mhm.
know from other episodes that these writers are smarter than that. But that was a massive oversight that really made an argument against trans folks. And I just I needed us to say that out loud, that genetics determining true self is a bunch of crap, and
Yeah.
it denies reality.
And in fact, they go through this mind melding process to do it as well, and like that's also manipulation of the outcome. That
Yeah.
you're having someone else also tell you who you are, and that's not great all around. So
Yeah.
agreed. Good point, Mark. Um, the last one I wanted to talk about was episode 9 that we've already talked about some, where Ortega is stranded on the moon with the Gorn, and she's forced to confront some of her biases about the Gorn. Um, and this reminded me of course, we've got some the classic episode with the original series, and we've also got ones like we see this, I think, in pretty much every Star Trek franchise, where they're like
Right.
stranded together and they realize, hey, maybe one person isn't as bad as I've like made all of the people to be, this whole group to
Right.
be. I think about Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra
Right.
in the TNG episode. Um, how is it, Mark, whenever we're less willing to sit down and build relationships, like we talked about earlier, where we're less able to have those relationships as the world is increasingly polarized? How is it that we really build those kinds of bridges and come to those conclusions? It just seems to
Yeah.
be harder and harder than it used to be.
It's
Anyway.
certainly harder and harder. And I think the main part ultimately, if you don't have those relationships and you allow the lack of them to begin to separate you from someone that you might identify as some form of other, part of the real issue is education. I mean, that's one of the things that the relationship will overcome, is that the things that you think are true, can frequently find out are not true. So even if you're not in that relationship yet, educating yourself from non-biased sources, like we were just talking about earlier, can help you begin to recognize some of the false things that you did believe, and might even open you and make you feel safe to beginning a relationship. I mean, in this series, unfortunately, this happens all the time in movies and television. It's by need that they're forced together and overcome their cultural and racial biases. But outside of being forced together in a situation where you have to depend on each other, education, I think, is key if you're not yet in the relationship, because it helps you understand maybe the shortfallings that you had and what you were thinking, so that you feel like you might have a safer space to begin creating those relationships. I think that's one of the keys. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think that's great, and I appreciate too. I think you're right that unbiased journalism again. That as you lifted that up, that's so important. Like, let's
Yeah.
read about real people. Like, if we don't know people, let's encounter them in some way to humanize people with differences of opinion. I'd love to talk about this more. I've got other questions, but you know what? If we continue chatting about this, Mark, we're not going to get to the make me look stupid segment.
Yeah,
And we got to get there. So why don't we take a break, take a sip, and come back and try to make each other look stupid.
Moonshine Jesus, nobody sky.
Hello and welcome to our Make Me Look Stupid segment. It's a segment where we begin to do our best to try to make our co-hosts look, maybe like they don't know what they're talking about, or at least admit that we don't know what we're talking about and defer to their well-educated perspectives. Or sometimes we like to make them make a prediction so that we can make them look stupid in the future. That's what I'm going to do to you right now, Caleb. I
Okay.
would like
Yes.
you to make a prediction, and so that we can figure out, did you know what you were talking about? So, we're
This
getting
always goes so well for me.
absolutely. We are getting closer and closer to the original series
Yes.
timeline, right? We only got 2 seasons left, and I think I read that the last season's even a shortened season. We're not going to get a full season, and it's going to end literally right at the first episode of the original series.
hmm
I'm curious, what do you think is going to happen to the characters who aren't on the original series? Laron, Ortegas, Mbinga. What are your thoughts on what's going to happen here? We've got, I'm going to guess, 15-ish episodes
Yeah.
for us to understand why they're not there on the ship when Kirk arrives.
I think they'll do something bold, and I think that a lot of them are going to be tied up in what Pike has the decision Pike has to make to save all these cadets and ship and all
Yeah.
that. I think some of them will be a part of that. I think this also gives them the creativity to give these characters kind of bold exits,
Right.
that they don't have to play it safe because we don't have to have those characters. I mean, in fact, it creates problems, right?
Yeah.
If they get too attached to the characters. And of course, they could uh, take some of the characters and put them on their own shows or whatever, or go off to their own ships or whatever. I don't think we've got characters that are going to be strong enough that like we're going to have another series that they're going to be
Right.
in. I don't really see that happening. So I think I would like to see them do some bold things with the characters.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what they'll do or not, but I would love to see them take some risks for them to have some consequences for their
Yeah.
actions. That maybe others of them die, or they decide to stay on a planet somewhere, or they go off and do something different. That's what I would like to see happen with them.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen?
I very much like your answers. I think that we need some of them to be tragic, and it
Yeah.
could be with what happens to Pike,
Yeah.
because I think even though the last episode we saw a version where that doesn't have to happen to him, I think we're very much going to see that happen to him. It's good. It fits with canon, and it's where
Yeah.
we're gonna live. It wouldn't be surprising if one or two of those folks are with him or in the same area where the tragedy happens.
Yeah.
I also think that we have a couple of characters that maybe you could see them saying, you know what, this is not for me. Like something major happens that's really overwhelming. I could see them say, maybe I'm just, like you said, maybe I'm just going to go that small planet that we just visited that doesn't have any of the technology and they live a simple life. Maybe that's what I want for the rest of my time. I also really hope that maybe one or two end up like doing something mysterious, like quietly joining Black Ops or something like that, where of course we've never heard about them because
Yeah.
they went into this mysterious part of what we do. So I'd love to see
Section
that.
31. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see, Laan or Mbinga. I could see any of them kind of sliding into something like that possibly. So I don't know. I think that could be fun. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that could be fun. And they have already experimented some with the Section 31, and so if we wanted to
Yeah.
see any of them continue on, that might be a fun way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I've got a question for you, Mark.
All right. I was going to say, your turn.
All right, so we've talked about how the writing was maybe mediocre, or maybe not mediocre, but not up to par.
There you go. I think that's fair. Yes.
And we've also talked about some of the things that we liked about the first 2 seasons. So other than like writing better and maybe embracing some more creative ideas. What can they do to really help the next 2 seasons finish up this series strong? Since we've got a specified end date, we've got just like you said, maybe 15 more episodes
Right.
that they can do to really make this a memorable series that takes its place in the Star Trek canon and keeps its place there.
I think the two things that I would immediately jump to are two things that we've already mentioned.
Yeah.
The one that you specifically brought up. There's a reason why they say explore strange new worlds. Let's do a little of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's do that. Even if it's things that we've never seen and won't ever see again.
Yeah.
It's a giant universe. It's not surprising that they might find one thing and move on. But in all of that, we have to get back to the optimism, the hopefulness. I'm not asking them to live in hope. Living in hope, if you sit in hope, you can stagnate and just sit there and hope. But seeing actions that provide hope, seeing groups come together that were divided, I think that's the two big marching orders for me. Let's do that again, folks. And of course, I do think, as much as I like the new characters, and as much as it provides some variety, I do think we need to be slowly emphasizing the characters that are going to be in the original series and seeing them coming together as a crew and bonding together. And I think we're going to do that because we have to start losing some of these other ones for it to make sense at the conclusion while they're not there. So those are the two big ones for me.
We
What
can
do you
lose.
think?
We can lose Pelia soon, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
Like that was one of the ones where I'm like, okay, we've got Scotty. Can we get rid of her, please?
She is a lot. She is a lot.
And I mean, there were whole episodes. I mean, like several episodes in a row where she just like wouldn't be there, and I'm like, okay. And then she'd like come back and be like, Can she die? Can we kill her off? Can she get registered?
She also gives them too many excuses to do dumb things, like the telephone. Like you're telling me between the 1970s and 80s, there was no other form of communication that she might have brought along with her that would have made it was the biggest.
And like, okay, the fastest way to get communication across the ship is to run copper wire, like across the spaceship. Like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Again, there's another example. There's another example of writing where I get being in the writer's room when it's first pitched, going, "Oh, that'd be weird. That'd be fun. Let's do that." But if you had the time, you would go, "Oh, wait a minute, guys.
Maybe not."
There's hundreds of years here. They probably had other things that would have been easier to set up, faster. And if she brought those, she certainly brought the other things.
Well, and where did they even get? I mean,
she's timeless, man. She probably has like a box that she can hoard everything that she's ever owned into, some magical future box.
Copper wire enough.
Of course. Why wouldn't
she? Entire starship, because it wasn't just like from the cell to bridge or whatever.
No, it was everywhere.
It was like all over, like an intricate web, so they could we got to call engineering, and we got to call stellar cartography or whatever.
Yeah, it was a lot, man.
So if we could get rid of Pelia, I'd be cool with that. So
I'm fine with it too.
I think I like those. I agree with those. I would also like to see a little bit more episodic storytelling. So I'm okay. I think with the. I just like episodic storytelling. I thought that was one of the things that was really endearing about Strange New Worlds to me. Was that we had, I think with Discovery in particular, just these huge like season-wide storylines and episodic storytelling where you can just pop in and catch a story and enjoy it. I thought was something that was enjoyable.
That's fair.
And even like I think about like the Next Generation, where we got some more some more larger storytelling. It was often only over a couple of episodes, and then you might return to it, in a few
And it
episodes.
wasn't ever the long story arch was very rarely the main story arch of each
Right,
episode. It was
right.
part of it. It was
Yes.
blended in and it pulled us into the next episode, but the episode itself frequently was self-contained
Yeah.
with just that thread running through it.
Yes, so
Which
I think about like the Borg in the Next Generation,
yeah,
right? You had the season finale and the intro to the season where Picard is Locutus as the Borg, right?
yeah,
And it's not like the
exactly.
Borg went away whenever it
Yeah,
wasn't that storyline, but they would come back and it would be kind of contained. I think about the story with Hugh, like where he realizes that he's not just a Borg, that he's a human being, right? So it took the
yeah.
broader concept, but it was still episodic. I'd like to see some more of that. I think that would
Yeah,
strengthen
no,
the show.
I like that. I like that a lot, and it makes a lot more sense to at least by the end of season 5 be doing that, since the original series is mostly that anyway, and so
Yeah.
it feels like it naturally flows into it. So I like that a lot. Like we said, season 3, yeah, we can pick on it and we can show where it's not as good as the first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
It was still good. There were
It
moments
was
where I
so good.
rolled my
Yeah.
eyes,
Yeah.
but there were also moments where I wiped my eyes, particularly
Yeah.
in that last episode.
Yeah.
That I think that montage of them as a couple, and
Yeah.
her needing that the love winning is
Yeah.
what allowed her to defeat the darkness.
Yeah.
And seeing their storyline, seeing how it progressed, there was that beautiful poetic knocking at the door.
Yeah.
I
It was
was
good.
teary-eyed,
It was
man.
good.
I thought it was one of my favorite things that Star Trek has done in a very, very long time. So
Yeah.
this season had its moments, and so I'm
Yeah.
very much
Fair.
looking forward
Fair.
to
Yeah.
season 4. I hope
Yeah.
that we don't have to wait 2 years for it.
I know.
I'm very excited about it. So, but it's been fun talking about it for sure. Listen, we've done what we can do for this episode. We have actually run over time just a little bit. I want to thank everybody who's been tuning in and watching with us. You guys make this possible, so we always like to thank you and let you know how much we appreciate you. One of the things that we have been trying to figure out is what we're going to talk about next week, because we are in that weird little lag area. But I know that we both are watching a show. It's not concluded yet, but it's got a good start to it. Gen V, which is the offshoot of The Boys, which
Yeah.
is fantastic. And so far, I'm sure you've been following along too. The episodes
Yep.
have been pretty good,
They've been
dealing with
good.
some pretty serious issues. So
Yeah.
while I don't know that we've ever kind of jumped in the middle of a serial,
Yeah.
this seems like it might be the time to do it. What do you
Let's
think?
do it. Yeah, I'm
right.
into it. I've been watching it. I
have
binged
to.
all
It's so
3
good.
episodes last night.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Absolutely. So we'll have another one before next week so we can do the first 4 episodes. If you're out there, please join us for that. And again, thank you for joining us to watch those things and then coming and joining us for the show. We really appreciate it. It's why we get to do the show. So just thank you. And I say that. And until the next time, we'll see you on the Moonshine Jesus Show.
Moonshine Jesus, nobody